Okay, I think we are we have a few more people coming in, but we're going to go ahead and get started so that we can maximize our time together. Um, have a great webinar in store for you all today. My name is Melanie Pesco. I am with the APH Connect Center, and my colleague Pris Rogers and I are so excited to bring this webinar to you all today on the 31st anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we're just super excited to bring our guest to you today. And with that, I will let Pris introduce our special guest. Go ahead, Pris.
Thanks, Melanie. And this is a great honor to be able to introduce Hannah Fairbairn. Hannah was born in the UK with partial vision, and she began her working life as a chef. I bet most of you did not know that. At the age of 33, she lost most of her sight overnight, and she found out that the best thing for her to cook at that time were soups. And she actually wrote a book called Soups. I bet you all didn't know that either. And it actually won a prestigious award. So she continued to write, and then she moved to the States, and she went to work at the Carroll Center for the Blind in Massachusetts, where she taught home and personal management for over 18 years. And she started thinking about writing a book. And finally, based on our experiences at the Carroll Center and her own personal experiences, in 2018, she wrote and published When You Can't Believe Your Eyes, Vision Loss and Personal Recovery. And we have on our website, we have a review of that book, and we will have the link to that. I think it's in our list of resources. So anyway, as Melanie said, it's really a great thing to have Hannah here today on the anniversary of the ADA, because a lot of what Hannah talks about in her book is using the skills and what you have learned as a person with vision loss to be more assertive, to be able to take action in all kinds of settings as your independence and confidence increase. So with that, I'm going to turn the program over to Hannah so that you can hear all about what she has to say. Hannah, go for it.
Hello everyone. And I'm really delighted to be here, and I feel very honored to be talking to you all. As you can hear, I was born in England, and I've never managed to quite get rid of the accent, but I hope I speak clearly enough. Anyway, I want to say that there will be odd little gaps now and then because I can't read print and I can't read Braille fast enough to use as a kind of word prompt script. So I have to use speech. So every now and then I'll just check. You see my earbud, or maybe you don't, but anyway, I have an earbud just to check what I'm talking about here. So today, this very day, is the 31st anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And of course, it was real crusaders as well as lawmakers and activists who got this passed through Congress in 1990. But now, as a result, all these years later, we can use the Act in our daily lives to improve our self-advocacy skills. It's really a great, great thing. Now, the Americans with Disabilities Act has not yet done employment, got as far with employment as we hope it will. It's by no means perfect, but being able to get assistance in big stores, in anything chain, restaurants or pharmacies or whatever, anything big is now really very widely available. And there you are, you can practice there your self-advocacy with people that you mostly don't know. And, you know, you can make mistakes and improve, go home, practice again, try harder until you really get the idea of how you're going to do it. So I just want to tell you a tiny bit about how my book, When You Can't Believe Your Eyes, is the title of it, and the subtitle is Vision Loss and Personal Recovery. And this is how it came to be written. As Chris said, I was teaching at the Carroll Center, and I was teaching personal management. punishment. And some clients, a couple of really bright students came to me and said, you know, we need to speak up differently, speak differently now we can't see. This is, you know, the way we used to speak isn't working. We've got to have a new way of doing it. And I thought, by golly, they're right. And, you know, looking back to my own first days and indeed months and years with just the little bit of low vision I have, I saw that they were right. So after that, we had years of classes at the Carroll Center, small groups for adults and large groups for the teens in the summer, talking about all this good stuff, self-advocacy, speech and action in different circumstances. I just want to tell you a little bit about my own low vision. I hear that many of you listening and watching have AMD, and I know that that means that you tend to lose central vision. And although everybody's low vision is, of course, different, that's not incredibly different from what I have left, sort of no useful print vision except for massively magnified, but quite good sort of getting around vision and color vision. So that's what I have. Anyway, back to my book for a moment. It took a focus group of former students and lots of interviews, over 100 interviews with students at the Carroll Center to find out what they, who were all more or less or nearly all new to vision loss, to really understand what was needed, because I so much wanted people who were going through sight loss, who were living with sight loss, to have something in their pocket, something they could refer to, where they could find the information they needed, find good resources, and so on. And so my book was finally published 2 years ago in 2019. And so the third thing I want to say is, when you have somewhat good low vision, it's very sort of tempting to say, oh, I can handle this. I don't have to do much. I can kind of go on as before. I don't have to make huge adjustments in my life. I'll just do this, this, and this, and, you know, go on. And at the beginning, you probably can do that. But the longer you leave it, really facing the fact that this is a severe loss, really a profound loss as you lose more, the more you get kind of stuck. And let me tell you that once you can bring yourself to take on self-advocacy with vision loss, you'll find that it really changes your life. It really, really does. So I'm going to start by talking, a bit surprisingly perhaps, not so much about self-advocacy, but about the 3 issues that prevent people from getting on with self-advocacy. And you actually all know all of this already, but it doesn't get talked about much. And I'm sure that all of us are old enough and wise enough now to know that it's very wise to talk about problems and issues, talk about them out loud and quite a bit, so we can really face them. So here are the 3 that are really important to talk about. People who see well, including ourselves, if we used to see well, are scared about sight loss, really quite afraid of it, and can't imagine it, really can't imagine it, can't think out of the sighted box. Now, of course, there are exceptions. There are some wonderful close friends and family members who are just great at understanding, fully kind of understanding what's happening and helping with it. And of course, there are some great vision rehab therapists, vision rehab teachers, and other people in the field who also can be absolutely great. But I can tell you that, and you probably know this already, that nearly all the people you meet in public, whether you're meeting them socially or in a store or a doctor's office, they know nothing about sight loss. And so we feel, because sight is so dominant, everybody talks about seeing things all the time, photos and movies and all kinds of stuff. It's so much what people talk about. We tend to think when we first lose sight, oh, they must know. The sighted people must know, but they don't. They haven't a clue. So you have to step up and you have to become the leader in situations, not kind of obvious, big, bossy leader, but quietly taking over. Because you're the one who knows how to do it. You have to help the person who sees well, who is maybe assisting you or is maybe just talking at a social event, to manage the situation. You have to manage the situation and coach the other person in how they're going to help you. So that's the first thing, the fact that sighted people, including, as I say, many of us who used to see well, have no idea about sight loss. The second thing, the second big issue is how much non-verbal communication, sometimes referred to as NVC, non-verbal communication is going on during what are supposed to be verbal talking interchanges. So some people say it's between 60 and 70% of all communication is actually non-verbal. And of course, as we all know, it's much more at the beginning when you're finding someone or meeting someone, or if it's outdoors. So, nodding, smiling, making eye contact, beckoning, pointing, turning your body towards someone or away from them, looking down, looking away. I mean, it's just hundreds of things that people do with their bodies and their faces and their eyes that indicate how they feel or what they want without anything being said at all. Excuse me. And so, again, we have to step up and start talking so that we are really stopping this, transmission of ideas and wishes through non-verbal communication. So it's not that we don't smile and nod and whatever we can, but as we all know, what's coming back to us is partly or maybe completely lost on us. We're just not picking it up. Now, what makes this more complicated is that people who see well are mostly very unaware of how much they depend on all this nodding and smiling and eye contact. They don't realize it at all. So that, and of course some people do, but most people do not. And so that makes the need to speak up and to, use our speech and our skills to get what we need to start the conversation even more crucial. So the third essential issue is the most difficult to talk about. Excuse me, I'll just have a little water. And that is the need to grieve. The need to really look at what's going on and, you know, get it out on the table. If you still have good low vision, you know, plenty of low vision, and you can kind of read fairly well and so on, it's very hard to acknowledge to yourself how much you are losing in, maybe it's just eye contact, maybe it's facial expression, maybe it's more than that. Maybe you don't recognize people, or you don't know who you're talking to. Maybe you can't read small print anymore. It's all a very significant loss, even while you have pretty good vision. So there's this desire to keep on telling yourself, oh, I can see pretty much. I don't have to do much. I did this for a long time. Half of you knows perfectly well that this is serious, that you need to do something about it, that it is very significant, perhaps, and will perhaps become severe. But you don't want to face it. You want to go on being part of the sighted world. And of course, you will continue seeing as much as you can and getting all the help you can to see as well as possible, using magnification, using high contrast, using bold print, whatever you need to see as well as possible. But that is a separate issue. Yet you cannot really find yourself as a strong person, a person who's grown, has expanded what you can deal with, because you have understood and acknowledged how serious this is. And grief can come in waves. It often does, different stress during the process of vision loss. I think that nobody ever really finishes with the grief because, you know, it's serious, often more than serious. But you can get to a point where you've really pretty much come out the other end of grieving, but you do have to go through it. Now, grief, as I'm sure most of you already know, is not a pretty thing. It's not just sorrow. It's not just tears. It's often fear, often acute fear, anger, sometimes rage, self-pity. I did plenty of that. Resentment. There's a quote in my book, I should have been able to see. I should have been able to drive. A lot of us feel like that, most of us probably, you know, and then there's the whole why me thing. I remember rage rising up through me from kind of somewhere down near my feet almost, coming up through the back of my brain because a really well-intentioned woman spoke to me on the street. I knew her. She was an acquaintance. She'd been nice to us when we were new to the town. And she said to me, oh, we could play a game together. There's a game called Passport, which is quite good. And I was absolutely enraged because it felt insulting that, you know, she was sort of grabbing around for something she could do with me instead of just treating me like another person, you know. Anyway, I don't know what she thought of my face. It must have been a real horror show, I'm sure. I don't think I said anything.
Hannah, this is Melanie. I
Yes,
think this might be a good time for people to begin to put your questions in the chat. In about 5 moments, we will stop for a Q&A session. So if you want to
right.
start putting your questions in the chat, or if you'd like to raise your hand, we will be glad to take hands as well. So in about 5
Right.
minutes, Hannah.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
So I do want to emphasize this because it can feel so difficult to begin, like many things. And you do need to honor your anger, not push it down, and honor your fear. And maybe go into your bedroom and shut the door and speak out loud all the things that you feel so angry about, all the self-pity, all the rage, and maybe do it more than once. And also talk a lot to people if you're lucky enough to have a good circle of friends and family. Maybe you can talk to a cousin on the phone who's a good listener, or maybe you can talk to rehab professionals, vision rehab professionals, or maybe there's a pastor that you really like. Anyway, you do have to talk and talk and talk about it. So it becomes sort of more everyday to you. You begin to really believe it yourself rather than sitting on it. Jamming it down is not smart. As you know, I mean, I know we all know this from our past experience, but it's hard to begin. And then in the long run, as well as talking to all kinds of people that you already know, you might want to think about a therapist. I know not everybody thinks of this, but therapy, sort of an hour a week where you just talk about all this stuff with a professional who hopefully knows some good resources. And you want to pick somebody. They don't have to know about vision loss, but you want to pick a therapist who is not only well qualified and licensed in your state, but who has other clients, other patients with serious disabilities or with diseases, maybe like Parkinson's, or who has, best of all, a member of the family with a significant disability. So they understand how serious this is, what a huge change you have to make in your life, or you may have to make, and can help you talk it through. So you may think that I'm going on about this too much and that this is all over the top, but I wanted to tell you that when I talk to groups of people who live with sight loss or blindness, which I've done a lot in the past couple of years, the need to grieve comes up again and again as something that you have to do before you can move on. And you know, become the person who is not only using all the sight she or he has left, but is also able to talk about and use skills related to non-visual stuff. So I think that's a good place to stop, Melanie, if you
I
do.
think
And
that's
please,
great.
yeah,
Yes.
please
So
do ask questions, everyone. I'd love to hear what you think.
yes. So feel free to raise your hands also. If you'd like to do that, we'd be more than happy to give you a microphone to be able to talk, or to unmute you to talk and ask your questions specifically to Hannah. We do have a couple of questions in the chat. The first question, I think this is really great, what are some strategies you have for someone who cannot recognize faces, for example, meeting friends in a public place? Do you have any
Very
thoughts?
good. Great question. Yes. I'm so glad you asked this question. So I think you have to just tell it like it is. You have to say, tell me who you are, or I can't recognize your face, or however you would say it, you're going to work on a phrase so you feel comfortable with it and it comes out comes out right, that suits the way you talk. But you have to establish who it is. There's no other way, because I can't think of any greater disempowerment than not knowing who you're talking to. Now, the really difficult thing is when they pass you on the street saying, "Hello, Hannah," and then they've gone. And if you feel very full of life, you could turn around and call after them. But otherwise, if they stop, you do need to find out who it is. So you have to take your courage in both hands, work on your response, and go for it.
Excellent. Let's see. Next question. We do have quite a few questions. One is a quick one is, do you think that new technology has helped you?
Oh, yes. I was going to mention this in the second half. Yes.
Okay.
I mean, smartphones, tablets, where you can use large print if that's good for you. And obviously, not least, smart speakers. And then there's all the kind of audio, the speech program. I mean, everything is revolutionized since I first lost my vision. It's so different. And indeed, from when I first started thinking about writing the book, which was 2004, it's just come so far, so fast. And I do recommend, getting some technology instruction, depending on, what would work best for you.
There've been a couple questions about grieving and advocacy suggestions. One question specifically, someone is working with adults with intellectual disabilities who also have low vision and looking for any grief counselors, specifically on the South Shore, but I think that's probably also a broad question if you have answers for that. And then similarly, any advice for working with grieving families and advocacy suggestions for them, particularly those who have children with progressive vision loss conditions?
Yes. Oh dear. Yes. So the first question, I don't think it's so much a matter of a grief counselor, although that would be very good, as finding a counselor or therapist who really understands about disability. That's the key thing, more than exactly what their counseling background is or their therapist background. Someone who can sort of enter into what it might be like to have not only low vision, but also learning disabilities, educational delays, that kind of thing, and is able to pick up on the level that somebody is at and help them with it. For the parents, I think that was my very greatest grief, was finding that my younger daughter had inherited my eye condition. The good thing about it, and I don't want to minimize that grief, it was terrible. But the good thing is that as parents, it's all in your hands, and there's absolutely no doubt that how much effort and work the parents put into supporting the child with vision loss or progressive vision loss, whatever kind of vision loss, the more successful they are. All the stories, all the books written by people with vision loss, people who live with blindness, you can divide them straight down the middle between people who had good support from their families, who really looked for the education, the leisure activities, the friends, made sure they were dressed right, had the right toys. You know, this obviously depends on income and where you live, but as much as possible, looked for summer programs. So they had friends who were also visually impaired, just put in so much work. You know, our daughter didn't have severe vision loss, just moderate, still does, obviously. And I remember when she went to college, my husband and I put our feet up and said, wow, we can choose what to do this evening. So it's a long job, but the reward of knowing that you put in everything you have to make sure your child can live a satisfying life is well worth it. And it does seem to diminish the grief, just being able to work at it with your child.
Hannah, there have been a couple of comments that might be a springboard for conversation that I wanted to bring up to you. They both are around anger. One person, Sherry, says that she used to push her anger down and try to ignore all her feelings. And her vision loss is not severe, probably more mild, but it has changed forever and for the rest of her life. And it is hard to deal with that. And then additionally, we have another comment that this is so validating. I get so angry so often, and I never know how much or how little to share with my loved ones. So do you have anything that you can kind of spring off of that?
Well, yes, I have such sympathy with this, and it is an issue in vision loss. Anger is an issue, there's no doubt, because it's maddening. You know, it's absolutely maddening. There you are, you're holding the packet of frozen whatever, and damn it all, you can't read the directions, you know, and you're either guessing or you're asking. Anyway, it's just absolutely maddening. I would definitely not clamp it down. I would try the honoring it thing of really talking about your anger to yourself. It's very hard if you bring your anger out towards and it somehow ends up landing on your loved ones, which, you know, is going to happen, let's face it. It doesn't do any good. I do think that if you could find a therapist or a counselor who would allow you, who would encourage you to talk through your anger, get it all out on the table, and then maybe make some suggestions, that would be very helpful. You know, the best advice I ever received about therapists, and this would apply to counselors, which is really the same kind of thing. Counselors are often more general about careers and things, and therapists more about family. I was taking this class, and this guy who was a retired Harvard professor said, interview 3 therapists and go with your gut about who to choose. That was such good advice. Now, of course, you may be laughing in a hollow way, saying, you know, it'd be great to find 3 therapists. I could, but if you, as I say, they don't have to be anger counselors or grief counselors or vision loss counselors. They just have to be a kind of warm human being who you can relate to with good, you know, the right qualifications, where you can sit and talk for an hour a week and just look at all that anger together, and don't criticize yourself. Your anger is absolutely valid. It is infuriating.
We have a couple of other questions if you think we have time, or if you'd like, we can save them for later.
No, let's go ahead, and I'll just try and keep the answers on the short side.
Absolutely. One person asks, how did you come to write your book? Another person asks, dealing with depression, how to deal with depression. And I think you've kind of touched on that, but you may have some additional thoughts. And then lastly, Someone asks about dealing with families that may not be ready to, that may still be in denial of the level of vision loss, and as a result, may not be ready to use a white cane or receive proper training to stay safe and maintain independence. So that's a lot.
Right.
But if you if you
Exactly.
need me to reiterate anything, I can.
Okay. Well, the first one, I think I partly covered. It did happen at the Carroll Center that a couple of people came to me and said, we need to learn how to speak up because speech obviously has to change. And the Carroll Center in the past had classes in spoken communication, but they died. Now I think and believe it's established that everybody gets some training in that. So that's how it began. And then I thought to myself, you know, we're all kind of reinventing the wheel here. We should have, there should be a resource for this so that people can read about how to practice self-advocacy, how you do this. And so that's how the book came about. And I have to here say that for my good fortune, I am married to a professional editor, so that's why the book is as readable as I hope you find it. Now, remind me what the second one was.
The second one is from someone who is an orientation and mobility instructor. The student and the family may be in denial about the level of vision loss and how that may impact their willingness to use a white cane or receive proper training.
Yes, this is a very serious issue. It's said, as I'm sure the person who asked the question knows well, that only a tiny percentage of people who are given a white cane, who ought to be using a white cane, are using it because of the feeling of exposure, like everybody looking at you. And the fact of the matter is, according to the mobility instructors that I consulted at the Carroll Center, there were three of them, that often there has to be some kind of accident, and hopefully a small one, before people realize that this has to go forward. It is really difficult. What sometimes helps, and you may know this already, is to take your student and the white cane away from the home area so they can practice somewhere where they're not known and get kind of cool with it, get to understand how helpful it is and how it shows, I needn't tell you, you know very well. So that's really my only suggestion, and it's not as good as I wish it was. I just hope that you can convince, especially the family, of the seriousness of the vision loss. And then presumably your student will come around a bit. It is really hard. There can be very serious denial. In fact, we all have denial to some extent.
We have one last question for now. And we will have time for a second question and answer session. So if you think of questions between now and then, either put them in the chat or hang on to them until we are ready for that. And you can certainly raise your hand and we'll be able to unmute you so you can speak directly to Hannah. But the last question, Hannah, is someone asks if you have any thoughts on how to help an adult who is nonverbal, but is clearly having anger issues and fear over the vision loss they don't understand.
Oh, wow. This is terrible. Yes. I don't know. I mean, it just has to be love, doesn't it, at this point? Presumably something like a punching bag or a, gym, something physical. Is safe and indoors, where the person can really kind of take out their rage on the equipment and feel. There was a punching bag at Carroll Center that was very well used, as well as some of the other things, you know, like elliptical machines and things. So I would think physical activity is the most I can think about. And the fear might help a bit. It might help the fear too. The more exercised one is, the less I think one does feel fearful. At least that's what happens to me. I'm sorry, that's a very thin answer. I wish I knew more.
All right. Thank you, Hannah. I am just looking up how, just in case we have anyone calling in on the phone that would like to raise your hand. I believe, and if I'm wrong, someone please correct me in the chat if you know better. I believe that it is *9 on your telephone to raise your hand. And then, of course, there is a raise hand button in the bottom corner of the iPhone app. So, Hannah, do you want to go ahead and continue on, and then we will break for another session in about 20 minutes or so, 25?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Right. So here we go on much more about actual self-advocacy, how you do it. And I just want to say before I start that even for those of us who haven't lost a loved one or been seriously ill, the past year has been very difficult, what with wearing masks and social distancing and staying safe at home as much as possible. I think everyone, and especially people with disabilities, people with vision loss, have lost physical and mental health and fitness. And I do hope now things can gradually open up again, and then we can actually practice what I'm going to recommend here. So because of the Americans with Disabilities Act, because of the ADA, you can practice self-advocacy at any chain pharmacy, chain grocery, you know, most restaurants and cafes and bars, banks, other businesses. All of these are really good places to practice self-advocacy because the staff are paid to serve customers and patients. Oh, and I forgot to say doctors' offices, of course. That's really important. So I want to say that the ADA stipulates that there have to be reasonable modifications to policies, practices, and procedures, but they don't say that businesses, say you go drop in at a convenience store, or you're on the road somewhere and you pop into the store there at a gas station, and there's just one person, you know, manning the register and looking at the door. They are not probably going to help you go to the back row of the, you know, the back aisle and find something. So it's not mandated that they have to help you. It has to be reasonable. But as I say, all the big stores will offer you some degree of service, more or less, depending on their staffing. If you want to do anything regular, or you know you will drop by fairly regularly, it's really important to give them a call. And if you can, suit them as to when to go, and then you can you know, fit in with their schedule. It's also very good to practice with somebody when you find somebody good, i.e. someone who helps you, who is detailed, who is exact, who reads you the package carefully, tells you the size, and you and she, it's often a she, not always, communicate well, then you want to find out when she works. And let me tell you, most people who work in stores and so on would much rather help you if you're a friendly type than go on the register or even stack shelves. So now here we get down to the real self-advocacy. As a person with vision loss, as I said, you do have to take the lead because no one knows how to assist you. You think they do because they can see, but they actually haven't a clue. So this is called assertive speech. And I just want to mention that during all my years in Boston, which has a lot of good services and facilities for blind people, I only once had an assistant in a grocery store who actually knew a lot about vision loss, once in nearly 30 years. So it's not going to happen often. But I did have some great helpers over the years who got really good at it. So now I want to talk about the way you make your request for assistance, because you're going to have to make requests for assistance, right? You're also going to have to refuse things you don't want. So that's another part of your practice. But at the moment, I'm just going to concentrate on the request thing. So you can request something, and we often do at the beginning of vision loss, in a way that is categorized as non-assertive, and sometimes it's called passive. You don't say much, you sound anxious or fearful, and you say something like, oh, I'm wondering where the toothpaste is. Oh, it's over there. Okay. And maybe you then get lost in the aisles, or, you know, you just haven't kind of got yourself ready to ask. And if somebody does assist you and you have that timid, sort of uncertain sound, they may get anxious and controlling, which is not helpful. Now, you can also be aggressive. So you can blame the other person, and we all know about this, of course, unfortunately. You can say, you know, well, you won't say something like, can't you tell I can't see? How do you expect me to find the toothpaste? You know, so then the person wants to get rid of you as fast as possible. Assertive speech is not being bossy, it's being firm, friendly, very positive, very firm, and knowing what you want, and then coaching the other person, which I'll talk about in a minute. So you might say something like, you might go into a pharmacy as before and say, oh, hello, I need to find some toothpaste. I have very little sight. That's what I say myself. I have very little sight. Can someone assist me, please? And then when somebody turns up, you say, may I take your arm? Or I can follow you if you don't go too fast. We need to start with the dental aisle. So you hear that you are telling them what's going to happen. And as we all know, if you tell somebody, tell the assistant or the nurse or whoever it is what to do in a friendly, positive, clear way, they are almost certainly going to do it unless there's something, you know, unless there's something wrong. And so that's what you're working on, being assertive in this way. So hitting the right tone, the right posture, the right kind of smile, all this, and something that suits you, not the way I do it, you know, my English tone and all that. If you you need to practice this. This is something you have to learn. It's a skill, like learning a speech or giving a toast, or, you know, maybe you used to act back in the day, or maybe you still do. This is acting. And to begin with, it can feel exactly like acting. But once you get better at it, it's just what you do. And the other person, whoever's assisting you, feels so much more comfortable because you know what you're doing. So you want to rehearse with a friend. It is a rehearsal, really. You do it over and over until you feel cool with it. You can rehearse with a friend on the phone, or with a family member, or best of all, perhaps you can phone the senior center and find one or two other people who have low vision, and you could have a little group conference on the phone. I think you can have three-way calls anyway, and 3 is a great number for practicing this. And then if you feel like it, if you can get your chutzpah up a bit, what you want to do is role play together. It is a blast. It was my students' favorite thing. And in May, I did it again with a training session in Georgia. It was, obviously I didn't go there. And you know, some of the students in the class, they were role playing, and it was really funny. It's great fun. I do recommend it. And it's obviously, if you're with other people who have a couple of other people, just 2 is plenty, who have the same issues, you can come to good solutions really fast. But however you do it, you have to practice. So the second thing is, you have to coach the assistant. As I say, I keep saying they haven't a clue. So, so this is like, I can take your arm, I can follow you. Let me know if there are any steps. I'll use my white cane behind you, explain what's going on, and then say anything else you need in the encounter, like, oh, will you tell me what brand it is, or can I hold the toothpaste so I see if it's the size I like? You know, just keep informing the person. You're coaching them all the time about how to talk to someone with sight loss. So you're really assisting their independence, not taking over from them. Now, of course, the real issue with this at the beginning is that, unlike some other kinds of awful loss, which don't show at all, your vision loss, if you go by yourself to the store and you're still new to this, but you can't see the screen that they want you to pay at, or you can't find the whatever you're looking for, some small package of something, you have to talk about your vision loss, which, you know, is far too raw. You just don't want to do it. And this was the same for the person who said that he or she couldn't recognize people on the street. So it is tough. It's really tough at the beginning, but practicing, working out what you can say that is clear and simple and preferably positive. It's better to say, I see very little, than I can't see much, because the negative statement is more kind of woolly, or I'm having trouble with my eyes. I mean, if you can say anything, it's good. It's a real step, but it is better for you and for the person who's going to assist you, or you need to explain to, if you say, I have vision impairment, or I have low vision. It feels more secure to them than if you make a different kind of statement, a more negative statement. I can't see, is sort of more wobbly. Anyway, I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Now, when you haven't done this yet, it can feel like you'd rather not. No, thanks, I won't do it. My family shop for me, they deliver it, you know, blah, blah, blah. But if you can just take baby steps, go to the very nearest place, whatever it is, go to a little friendly cafe or a bar, whatever. And what was remarkable was that if our students once could go out on their own and do some small thing, go into a store, you know, buy a candy bar and come back, they would feel so elated, so empowered that they'd done it, that they'd mentioned their vision loss, they'd asked for what they needed, and they'd come home again. That was such a triumph, really. And you will feel more like yourself, I assure you, when you are taking back control of your own life in this way and practicing self-advocacy. I just want to say a couple more quick things. You may be thinking to yourself, yes, but what about the family? And this is quite true. I do hope that you are able to manage most of your own stuff for yourself, and that you can either use bump dots or large print, whatever, on the basic machines like the microwave, the dishwasher, laundry machines, whatever, the oven, so you can do things for yourself. But training yourself on self-advocacy where people are paid to serve you, thank you ADA again, means that you feel more cool when it comes to the family and when it comes to shared spaces, because getting people to put things away is always, you know, a major challenge. And you'll probably end up being the major putter awayer yourself. It's usually the person in the household with vision loss who knows exactly where everything is, because we are the people who put it away. And so that's one thing. You can start outside the home and then bring it back. If it's clear that this is not working, that your family situation is just too difficult, I do hope that, and you know, made worse, I'm sure, by the last year, I do hope and very much that you will call social services and or call your vision rehab counselor if you have one, and explain what's happening and get yourself some help. There may be accommodations that can be worked on with your family that could be helped, or maybe, you know, you just need to move somewhere else. I don't know. Obviously, I don't know, but it is important that you are, first of all, managing as much of your own life at home as possible, and secondly, doing some things for the rest of the family, because they will be doing things for you. And so that's one thing. If you're living independently, please do call people and get out of the house as much as you can, so that you don't join things when they open up again, so you don't get isolated. That's really important. Lastly, if things do open up again, as I very much hope they will, and you are new to this self-advocacy stuff, and you get invited to a social event, if it's a large one, please do go with a sighted companion, and maybe even line up a couple of other people to help you, someone to have food with at the event, whatever, someone else to talk to, so you don't have an awful time, which can happen if you haven't made good plans. And secondly, if you're new to this, the great thing is to stick with the 3 S's. And the 3 S's are seated, simple, and small. So almost everyone who lives with vision loss or blindness would rather sit round a table with 6 or 8 other people and have a good talk, have a meal, have a drink, whatever. That's almost everybody would prefer that to big occasions with people standing up and moving around. So if you haven't worked on your self-advocacy skills yet, I would try to stick with that. So I'm going to stop there. I hope that's good enough, Melanie. And I hope there's lots more questions.
Yes. So we do have a couple of comments. I don't see too many questions yet, but now is the time. If you want to ask your questions of Hannah, feel free to either put them in the chat or again, raise your hand and we'll be happy to let you speak directly with Hannah. I just want to take just a second to let you know that this month on the Vision Aware website and blog, we have put a high focus on all things social media, or excuse me, not social media, self-advocacy. My goodness, we have been promoting through social media. There we go. All about self-advocacy. We have several blog posts and articles, some great resources that some of our Vision Aware peers have come up with. We also are including with this webinar a resource document that can be found on our website that has not only some of the resources that we do have on Vision Aware, but also some resources that Hannah has on both her website and her YouTube channel. So there's just lots of great stuff out there for you guys. Hannah, I'm going to read some of the comments and hopefully we'll get some more questions for you. Um, one person says that they love the 2 answers that you gave for them, and thanks you so much. You've given great direction. Another says, thank you for reminding us that we must find the courage to ask for help and not be embarrassed. You explained well about the ADA and how to work with others and businesses, especially if we have a friendly attitude. Also, someone says, great reminder to practice soliciting assistance. I have been trained to do this with my O&M students. It's fun. And then I really enjoyed your advocacy explanation of coaching, quote unquote, others on how to best assist you when requesting assistance. So many people tend to assume how to best help, and coaching them through can really help you and educate others too. Oh, that's so true. As a parent of a 15-year-old boy who has just experienced complete vision loss in one eye, I have really appreciated your book and also the webinar. I'll be sharing your teaching with my son to help him advocate for himself. Thanks for your wisdom and encouragement. Great
Thank you.
conversation.
Yeah,
Here's
I
a
do hope.
question.
Oh, what a thing to have your 15-year-old lose the sight of one eye. I hope that you're looking out for the best possible summer camp for him. Maybe not this summer if it's just happened, but maybe next summer and the summer after. The teens get so much, they can relax, you know, they can feel, oh, everybody here gets it. If they go to a good summer camp. So I do really recommend that for your son, and very good wishes.
I'll just take a brief liberty here and say that I wholeheartedly agree. I've been legally blind since birth. And during my high school years, I do remember going to a camp at a school for the blind where there were other children or adolescents like me, quote unquote, and that was just super validating and affirming. So I agree wholeheartedly there. We actually have a couple of questions and a hand. So I am going to pick the hand first. It is Ivis. And Ivis, I am going to ask you to unmute. So if you would like to unmute, you certainly can ask your question. You should have a...
I think I'm
there you go.
unmuted.
Yes, you are. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank you. I have also been very low vision since birth, and I work both in a group setting as a facilitator, and now I am a peer support partner at a fairly new program called Eye to Eye. And I'm also married to somebody who has RP. And I find that sometimes people who develop vision loss, at a later point in their life, kind of like act as though, well, gee, what do you know? You've been dealing with this your whole life. And I usually, what I try and say is, well, I agree. I think that psychologically, emotionally, it's a heck of a lot more difficult. Of course, those of us who are born with our condition have a whole different set of issues surrounding identity and, being accepted and so on and so forth. But, usually what I try and say is that the challenges are the same, people's stereotypes, whether people can't tell when they see you and they see you with your white cane or whatever. They can't tell when you lost your sight. And so, everyone who has vision loss, I think, has to deal with certain stereotypes and certain difficulties in getting a job and getting their foot in the door. But I was wondering if you had some other ideas about that.
Well, thank you very much for the question. And you do bring up, since that's what you're working with, you do bring up groups, support groups for people with vision loss. And I'm very glad you do that. And I'm very glad you brought it up, because they are or can be a great source of support for anyone who is beginning to go through vision loss. So please look on the Vision Aware website to see what's available near you, and call your nearest agency and find out about support groups. I have to say, they can occasionally get rather negative with it just being a moan session, so you don't want to do that. But if a good support group with a good facilitator, as I'm sure you are, is a wonderful thing. All kinds of good ideas come out of it. And it can also, of course, be a good place to practice some of these self-advocacy skills. Now, as far as complaints from people who are recently losing vision, that it's not so difficult for you, I think, of course, that this is rubbish. I think it's differently difficult. And there is no doubt that if you go through high school with vision loss, it's often very difficult indeed, and not something that anybody would like to put someone through. And then, of course, you have to deal with all the issues about employment and dating and so on and so on. So it's differently difficult, but I think biggest difficulty that I have found with people who lose sight in later life is a tendency to think that, oh, it's too late, or, oh, I don't have to do much, or, oh, this other person doesn't really understand. I think that attitude is the problem, because you, in fact, are a terrific resource. And if someone had a positive attitude, they could use you in so many ways to get good information and good knowledge about how to take the next step. So I think finding the energy to make changes in your life, which are such a benefit, I can't tell you how good you will feel once you've really started off. It's always the starting that's really difficult, off on self-advocacy and beginning to feel really good about yourself. Yeah, look, I'm doing this, I'm coping, I'm more than coping. So thank you very much for bringing that up. Yeah.
We have two very good questions, and we have another hand raised. So these questions are sort of related. One asks about if you're planning to go to a function, whether it be a new place, restaurant, wedding, are there questions you can call ahead and ask to be more prepared? And then similar.
Absolutely.
Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead and answer
go
that,
on.
and I'll ask the other.
No, give me the second one as
Okay,
well.
the second one is similar in that, how do you navigate nonverbal communication cues? And do you ask about it, or does that just, you don't want to come off sounding weird? They're wondering. how to
cues in the sense of CUES, non-verbal cues
correct.
like that.
Yes, yes,
Okay,
facial expressions
good.
and body
Well,
language.
look, I'm going to actually hold up my book. Is that, I don't know if that's visible. Chris, is that
I think
visible?
so.
Yeah, it's available in print, not large print. I so wish it was, but you can get it as a Google Play book and put it on a tablet or a computer, a laptop in large print, or you can get it on Talking Book Player or Bard or on Bookshare. So please do read the book because there's lots about this. It's I think it's chapter 9. Yes, just chapter 9. But just in brief, if you know you're going to a big occasion, I would first of all phone your host and find out if you, it depends a lot how well you know the host and what kind of occasion it is. But if there's food involved, try to get yourself a little job, you know, really minor, like handing out plates or maybe even giving everyone a napkin. I mean, just really small. And this puts you in the mix. And it means as everybody comes along, you can say, hi, you know, how are you? Who's this, please? And have a little chat and then carry on. So having a job at a big event is big help. Otherwise, phone the host. And then the most important thing is to find out who else is going. And then you want to call, depending how big the occasion is, you want to call 2 or 3 other people on that list, 2 or 3 of the other guests, and line up some help for yourself. Certainly someone to eat with, especially if it's a buffet. Oh, I once, I mean, I'm sure everybody has better stories than this, but I was once at a sort of fairly formal buffet and put my hand into something that I thought was a pile of napkins, and it turned out to be a great big bowl of yogurt. So there I was dripping away. Anyway, so someone to eat with feels really good. You've got that part squared away. And then someone else who's keeping an eye on you, who perhaps will arrive with you, give you a ride, and then you can find out with them where the bathroom is, where you're going to put your coat, and you know, so that you can, how long she or he intends to stay, all that kind of information. So the bigger the occasion, the more people you want to ask to keep an eye out for you and come and rescue you if you look lost. And then what was the second question? That was a little bit different.
No, I think, let's see, the second question was about navigating
yes,
facial
social
expressions
cues.
and body language,
right.
Social cues. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is a real problem. And if you're going by yourself to an event, it's great if you can meet someone at the entrance that you know who will start you off. Now, the jury is out on whether it's better to arrive early, get yourself situated somewhere holding a glass of something, and then you can hear voices coming in and hopefully find somebody you like. It's good to position yourself near an entrance so you can hear who's coming in, or waiting till later and coming in the middle of things. And then you really have to step up and say, can I join you? Or, you know, it is awkward. Can I join you? My sight's gone down a little bit, so can you tell me who's here? What you really want is to go into the room and have somebody help you at the beginning to tell you who's there, which group is which, and steer you towards a group, because that first getting into a group is it's very visual, and it's quite socially complex. So depending on the event, I would really try to have somebody help you over the first bit. Although if you're more experienced and you feel all right about it, you can just go join a group and say, hello, I'm Hannah. It's great to be here, isn't it? Can you tell me who's here? Just do it, because otherwise you get lost helicoptering around the edge, and that is death. So you just have to go for it.
One thing that I'll add too, Hannah, and maybe you'll agree with this, is that back in the days when we were shaking hands, I would always put my hand out first.
Yes.
Before anyone had a chance to. I would say, hi, I'm Melanie, and immediately put my hand out, because oftentimes we may not see a hand that comes our way. And
yes, I quite agree. That's a very
save a
good
little
point.
face.
Yeah, and maybe we'll get back to shaking hands, which is actually extremely useful, because you can kind of know how tall the person is, know how to direct your face if you have very little remaining vision or none. You can kind of get an impression of their hand and whether they have a kind of, it just connects you with them actually physically. It's such a worldwide, centuries-old thing to do. It is very helpful. So hopefully it comes back. Yes, put your hand out first so you don't miss the other
Hannah,
person.
we have about 7 minutes left, and there is one person with their hand raised. I'd like to take her question next. Her name is Sherry. And Sherry, I am asking you to unmute if you'd like to speak. Hopefully you are able to unmute yourself. Let me see. I don't think it'll let me unmute you. Oh, goodness. There may be a dialogue on your phone screen if you're on the phone that asks you to unmute, and you can unmute yourself, but I don't think it'll let me unmute you.
I think it's
no,
*6.
not it's Sherry with a CHERI. Someone in the chat asked if it was for them, and it's a different Sherry, I think. Well, shoot. Is it *6? I believe
*6 is unmute on the phone.
Yeah, it looks like this person, oh, she's not with us anymore. It looks like she dropped off. Well, that's too bad. Okay. Let's see. We've got a couple other comments here. My rising student seniors family believes joining a sorority will be a solution to social life and mobility.
Wow.
So, yeah, this is a good time also, again, to mention that we have an information and referral line at the Connect Center, and I'll be posting some information about that in the chat right in just a moment as soon as I copy it here. We have some great people on staff here to answer questions about resources and information, as well as some of the things that we've talked about here today. Sharon Huey is our information and referral specialist, and she has also put in that for the person who asked about the nonverbal adult.
Right.
She mentioned that lots of, oh goodness, where did it go? Grounding exercises, feet on the floor and sitting in the chair. What else did she say here? One moment. I just had it pulled up. Lots of physical contact, weighted blankets, anything that will ground them is what she says. But so we just put it in the chat, but I'm going to say verbally that our information and referral line, the number is 800-232-5463. And you can also email our information and referral specialists at connectcenter@aph.org. And we'll put that out again before we leave. Just ready to take some more questions if you have them. We have about 5 moments left. And
I just wanted to answer the point about going to college.
Yes.
and the sorority. I don't think anything is a total solution to going to college. And of course, the sorority might be wonderful or it might not be. Tend to visit prospective colleges, and I would go with which one has the biggest and most staffed disability department. That's number one. And number two, find a dorm that's closest to what the student, where the students' classes are likely to be, and also where the dining room is or whatever. I would stay strictly practical about this, and also try to register very early for classes so that she can get all her information early, or he. But the most important point is the size of the disability department, and also whether other students living with vision loss or blindness have graduated from that college.
Wonderful. Yeah. So are there any other questions? Anyone? We have just a few minutes. I want to give everyone the opportunity to ask any last moment questions before we give the closing code. Let's see here. Just watching for the questions. And again, we can take probably one last telephone or verbal question. Sorry, I can't get that out there. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and put our closing code in the chat, and then we'll give it in a moment verbally. Let's see here. I don't see any additional questions. Hannah, do you have any last thoughts before we go?
Yes, just that when we reach the stage of life like 50 plus and some later onset eye disease like AMD strikes, it is the time to remember all your knowledge and what you already have dealt with in your life, and know that actually you do have the strength and the chutzpah to tackle this, and you will become a larger, more buoyant, more fun person once you have gone through this this sort of grieving process, this adaptation and acceptance process, which I can tell you takes a good long time, because it kind of comes in waves, as I was saying. You are going to feel really glad that you did it. I can guarantee you. And remember that maybe certainly a fifth and maybe a quarter of the whole adult population of the US, or maybe it's the whole population, has a disability. So you're almost joining a majority, not quite, but a very significant minority of people. And we really need your help and your experience and your skills to add to all this good self-advocacy.
Hannah, we do have one last quick question from Jonathan, wondering about what thoughts you have to improve legislation like the ADA. We're getting a lot of thank yous and a lot of appreciation here.
Well, I wish that that there could be an addition to the ADA that would work on employment. There are all kinds of brave souls who are fighting to get employment in more fields, and especially with the new technology. But I would like legislation to toughen up on employment, because there is still a lot of prejudice and stigma about employing people with vision loss, who are often, I would almost say usually, extremely diligent, thoughtful workers who come up with all kinds of out of the box ideas.
Yeah, Yeah. All right. Well, Hannah, we are getting a lot of thank you very much. This was very wonderful presentation, very inspirational. The best presentation, oh, it just flew by me, that I've heard to date. Let's see. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I will definitely pass this on to my students to listen to and watch. Oh my gosh, it's going so fast. Everybody's saying thank you and they really enjoy it. I can't keep up with it. We are at time, so we're going to wrap it up here. Our closing ACV REP code is FEVER, FEVER, FEVER. And Hannah, I just want to thank you so much for being with us today. We've certainly appreciated you and your time and wonderful words of wisdom. And everyone, have a great evening, and we will be back with another webinar very soon. Stay in touch.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Goodbye. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off. Hannah, thank you very much. This was wonderful. We had,
Thank you.
let's see here, let me